Okay, welcome everyone to the virtual school. Today we will be extending our discussion which we left earlier on the user defined function and the types of function. Today we would be discussing parameters and argument. But before that, I would just like to say if you are new to my channel, just like and subscribe and comment and just like the content because it really motivates me and to put up good stuff. Okay. So now getting over to the parameters and the arguments. Okay. So as I've already discussed in my earlier lecture, that parameters are basically those values that are passed to a function if a function needs it. Okay. A function is not necessarily to be parameterized. Okay. But if you want to send certain arguments and you want certain outputs on the basis of those arguments, then you need to pass the parameters. Okay. Now let's get to the definition. The parameters are the values provided in the parenthesis when we write function header. Now what is a function header? Where you define the function, like example def SIPRT, and these are the parentheses. These circular braces are the parentheses. Okay. So and this is the function header because why? Because you are defining the function here, because you are naming the function, you are defining the arguments of the function here. So this is the function header. Okay. So the values that are provided are the parameters. Okay. So the P and R and T becomes the parameter for this function. Okay. And these are the values that is required by the function to work. And if there are more than one values required by the function to work on, then all of them are listed in the parameters list separated by comma. Okay. Like if you have multiple arguments, then you need to separate them by comma, and if you have a single argument, then you can just place it in the parentheses. Okay. Now what are these arguments? The arguments are the values provided in the function call or invoke statement. Okay. Now suppose you have a list of arguments that you want to supply to the function header. Okay, like suppose you want to calculate the radius or the total area of a circle. Okay, so you need to provide the radius for that. Okay, so wherever you are writing, like suppose the function name is area and the parameter it accepts is radius. Okay, so you need to call it by area, and then circular bracket begins, and then suppose I am taking the radius as 5, and then the bracket closes. Okay, so this entire definition actually invokes the area function. Okay, so what you are doing, you are basically supplying certain set of values to the function and you would be getting the area in the return. Okay, so this is where you invoke the function call, and this is where you pass the arguments. Okay, now if we take the example, the arguments in the function call like si 1000 comma 2 comma 10. So 1000 comma 2 comma 10 are the arguments that are passed to the si function to get the value. Okay, so this is where you pass the argument. Now where you define them, that is the function header. Okay, and where you pass them are the is where the function invoke call is made. Okay, similarly the examples are given. I would want you all to go through it one by one, and it would be more clear to you. Okay, and now coming over to the flow of execution. Okay, now by the line itself, the flow of execution, you can tell that this section basically deals with how a particular program is executed. Okay, now suppose you have 5 lines in the program. It is not necessary that all the 5 lines would be executed one by one. Okay, now suppose you have a looping statement in between. Okay, like for statement, or you have if conditions, if an else space condition. If you have, then only certain set of code would be executed. Like if the condition is true, then certain set of code would be executed, and if the condition is false, then certain set of code would be executed. So there are certain types of statements that actually define how the flow of the execution would be going through. Okay, are you getting my point? Now taking these types of statements into consideration, the first one is sequence statements. Okay, now the sequence statements are executed one after the another. Okay, because these statements don't change the flow of the program. It is basically a waterfall. Okay, like for example, if we take the program below, like find the area of the circle. Again, this seems to be a really a popular example that I am taking again and again, and even the book is taking. Okay, now here r is given and we take the input as the radius of the circle. Okay, now the user gets a prompt, enter any radius of the circle, and it inputs the radius, and we calculate the area by multiplying 3.14, that is the pi value, into r square. Okay, you can even simply write it using 3.14 into r, then double asterisk 2. So basically it would be calculating the r square. Anyways, for now, the next statement is print area. Now what we are doing is, we take the input, we calculate the area, we print it. Okay, so this is what, this is sequential in execution. There is no jumping around, there is no looping, there is no conditions around. Okay, so these are simply the sequence statement, that is, they are executed sequentially. Okay, now the next type of statements are selective statement. Now by the word itself you must be getting the idea that you need to be selective in these statements. Okay, like you need to give certain conditions, and depending on those conditions a certain set of block of code would be executed or would not be executed. Okay, now if you are familiar with the if and else condition statements, in the when we define the if condition, we provide certain set of statements that are to be executed if the condition is true, and if the condition is false, then we have the else block, and that condition are executed. And we in the Python we also have an else if ladder. Okay, we have the else if ladder in all the programming languages, but in Python the else if is replaced by elif, that is a shorthand. Okay, e stands for else, and el stands for else, and if stands for if. Okay, so elif, now if you have to write an else if ladder, then you provide if, then you have to write elif, then the other condition, then elif, then the other condition, and at last you need to write the else. Okay, so this is how the selective statement works, that is, they selectively execute a particular part of code. Okay, now taking an example, suppose here we take the principal amount, and we take the input as the time. Now we check if the time is greater than 10, then SI is calculated like this, with this formula, else the SI is calculated with this formula, that is basically the rate goes from 10 to 15. If the time is greater than 10, then the rate is 10, and if the time is less than 10, or basically if the time is less than 10, then the rate is calculated by 15%. Okay, so you can see, depending upon the value of t, either this statement or this statement would be executed. Okay, so you see, so you're seeing, this is how we make the selections on the basis of condition. Okay, similarly other questions are given. This is quite long, and this will extend our discussion even more, but I want you to go through it, and you can see the else if ladder is used here. Like I have told you, multiple elif conditions are used, so depending upon the value of c, certain set of codes would be executed, and rest code would be left, that is, they won't be executed anyways. Okay, uh, so this is how we make the selection. Now the last type of statements that we come across is the iterative statements. There comes a certain point in our code when we need to loop through certain set of statements to get a desired result. Now suppose if I give you a task that you have to add all the numbers. You have a variable that's whose value is 0, and what you have to do is you have to add up all the numbers up till 10. Now what you will do, you will take 1 and then you will add into that variable, then you will take 2 and then you will add into that variable. So what you are doing, you are basically taking a number and adding it to a particular variable. Okay, so what you are doing, you are looping 10 times to get to the desired result. Okay, so this is how the flow of execution made the actual condition of the question made you loop through a particular statement again and again to achieve certain task. Okay, so these are the iterative statements. Now in Python we have the for loop, we have the while loop. Okay, now using the for loop and the while loop, many programs we will discuss further in our lectures when we would be solving the exercises, but you don't have to worry for now. For now, just concentrate on the theoretical part. So if we talk about the flow of execution, we control the flow of execution. Flow of execution is basically how the program flow is working, and we control it by three statements, the three types of statement. That is, the first one is the selective statement, then the sequential statement, and then the iterative statements. Okay, so this is how the flow of execution concludes. Okay, now in the now these are all the examples that are given, and this will again make the entire lecture quite long. I want you all to go through each one of them and dry run them. Anyways, we would be discussing them when we would be doing the exercises. Now in the next discussion, I would be talking about the strings, and most probably if the lecture permits, we would be going through the list also in the next lecture. Okay, for now, I would be concluding the lectures. Okay, thank you so much.
If you liked our content, kindly like, share and subscribe us so that we get motivated and we can provide you more informative videos on the same subject.